fantastical, so unpredictable, here on the SNL Network.
Yes, welcome on in, everybody, to the SNL Network here on this Monday night in June. It is the beginning of our first summer series here at the SNL Network, and we are kicking things off this summer by talking about the career of one of our departed SNL cast members, the great, the legendary Kate McKinnon, who had been with the show for over a decade. And what an incredible career it was. We are here to talk about the greatest moments from her career, the storylines, and her legacy at the show. And we have put together a great panel of guests here to talk about Kate McKinnon. Joining us first over in a very rainy, thunderstormy Chicago, it is Morgan Killoren. Morgan, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. I know you are a huge Kate McKinnon fan, so this was the perfect podcast for you.
Yes, I just need to say, obviously, you know how everybody always has their favorite character in like a TV show or in a movie. Well, Kate has always been my favorite. I kind of grew up watching her because she started in 2012. That's when I was ending middle school, getting really into SNL. So I feel like I essentially grew up watching her, and she was always my go-to girl. So I love her, and I'm so excited that you asked me to join this episode because I feel like this is my goodbye to her in a way. But yeah, I'm so excited to dig deeper and give our girl her praise that she deserves.
For sure. And yeah, thank you to Saturday Night Live for at least giving us a heads up that some of these people were leaving before the start of next season, because we can properly honor them on the show. And that is what we are here to do. So looking forward to discussing all of those moments. Joining us is one of the hosts of our Hollywood Dish podcast. It is Rebecca North. Rebecca, how are you?
I'm good. Morgan took the words right out of my mouth. When I think about SNL, when I got super into it around middle school, early high school, where I would record it and come watch it back, it was always Kate's in a sketch. This is going to be good. No matter what the sketch was, whether it was over my head in middle school or anything, I was like, doesn't matter. Kate's going to make me laugh. So I'm super happy that I'm here to be able to honor and just really dissect a lot of what Kate did throughout her decade on SNL. I've been going through a rabbit hole of Kate videos, and it's I keep getting emo. They're so funny, but it's we're not going to have more of these. So until she, fingers crossed, hosts in the future. But I'm super happy to be able to honor her legacy on SNL.
Yes, for sure. And that's going to be something we're going to talk about probably near the end of the podcast, is when is the next time we are going to see Kate McKinnon on Saturday Night Live. So we'll address that towards the end of our show today. But of course, one of the guys that we have to talk to about these departed cast members, because he's seen the entirety of so many SNL careers in the past, it is Bill Kenney. Bill, how are you?
I'm doing great, John. I'm glad to be here. I was not in middle school when Kate started on the show, shockingly. But yeah, it's great to be able to kind of commemorate her career. And it was so great to sit down. It was a lot of homework to watch all the Kate stuff this weekend, but it was good homework with the show now in reruns, and having an excuse to watch 12 to 15 hours of SNL sketches is always a good thing.
Yes, for sure. It's always great to talk about a cast member that, is a great cast member. We don't have anything, there's going to be moments maybe that don't always work for everybody. But in this case tonight, I think we're going to talk about a lot of great moments for this particular cast member that has departed us. So I think that the way we're going to do this is we're going to go through things chronologically as best as possible, talk about some big moments, some big sketches in Kate McKinnon's career. But before we do that, let's start with an overall discussion on Kate McKinnon, maybe some major thoughts or takeaways since we spent the last, few days going over all of her sketches. Morgan, what does Kate mean to you? How do you think of her when you think of SNL?
Like Rebecca said, I would look forward to watching SNL because whenever Kate was in a sketch, she would just make the sketch come to life, and she's really shows her emotions when she's acting and when she's doing her comedy. And so you kind of feel that emotion from her. And so it makes you more into the sketch in a way. And she always would make me laugh just so hard. So I was always looking forward to seeing what she's going to do. And also in a way, she's kind of a wild card. So obviously she breaks a lot and she gets really into her characters, which makes it so much more exciting to see. So yeah, I just would always look forward to what she was going to bring.
For sure. That's a great word to describe Kate McKinnon, which is wild card. She doesn't necessarily fit into one box. I think that you see that, how she is as a cast member changes throughout her SNL career. There are arcs that we can follow. So, Rebecca, how would you describe Kate's SNL career? What did it mean to you?
I mean, first of all, just the fact that she was the first openly gay woman to be on the SNL cast is something that, like, I feel like it's been looked over now, just because as she obviously came from the Big Gay Sketch Show and she brought a lot of like queer characters to SNL, and being an openly gay woman, the first one, that's super commendable. So I think that shouldn't be overlooked. But also the other things that, like, so I'm agreeing with everything Morgan said, but to add some like a different take is that I started watching so young and Kate was on it for so long, and she kind of got me into politics and helped me understand and helped me learn and want to learn, because I wanted to understand. She, I think, has held on her back a lot of the political impressions throughout the last decade, male or female, and she really does such a good job. And everyone would always be laughing, and I was like, I don't get this. So I would research stuff before the show and I would try and learn. So I was understanding Kate's stuff. And now, as a super political person, we saw this season that Kate was even still going on Update as herself, talking about politics. And that is such a key thing in her life that she's brought to the show in like nothing but the funniest ways. Like sometimes those could be slow opens with a lot of the heavy politics, and you see Kate and you're like, is it going to be funny either way? Because we're going to laugh at her doing the impression, even if the subject isn't particularly funny. So I think that is such a huge impact she's made.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the most interesting part of the discussion we're going to be having today, is that at a certain point, Kate's career at SNL gets extremely political. And I think that we're going to, talk about the characters, the moments, how that career sort of pivots, and if it worked or if it didn't. I mean, for some, it varies for different people. So would love to talk about that in a little bit. Bill, over to you. So give us your general thoughts, your description, how you will remember Kate McKinnon in the long run.
I think she has one of the most fascinating careers of an SNL cast member, not only because of the longevity. She's now the longest female cast member in history. That won't last long, but if Cecily's there next year. But yeah, I mean, she straddled the end of the last golden era. She was on and watching these old sketches with Fred and Bill and Jason and Andy. And to see, I mean, she covered 43 cast members by my count. I mean, that's pretty much 25% of the entire history of the show. It's pretty fascinating. And yeah, as Rebecca mentions, I mean, her trajectory into the political part of it is really, really interesting to me, as somebody who's really into politics. And you've seen these people like Seth Meyers, who, if John Kerry had won in 2004, how would his career have been different? Would he have hosted Weekend Update? Would he have gotten a late night show if he just kind of portrayed Kerry? Because typically the president doesn't do the other things. I mean, as far as Weekend Update. So I find that fascinating, that even though Hillary lost and she was portraying her so much, she went on to play so many Trump lackeys that it's just absolutely fascinating to me.
Yeah, it's really crazy. And I want to start with the first point that you brought up, Bill, which is, when she came on the show, it's easy to forget now because we watched so much of Kate as the political figures lately and the things that she's done in the last few years, but it's easy to forget, at the time that she started. That's, how we're going to kick off our discussion of the moments of her career tonight. And, I remember where I was. I remember finding out that Kate McKinnon was a cast member. I heard about this, and to me at the time, we didn't know that Kristen Wiig was leaving the show. Nobody knew that Andy Samberg was leaving the show, and Kate McKinnon was brought on. And I, was talking to my friends, and it was like, what did we need Kate for? Because we had Kristen Wiig. And like, obviously little did I know that they would end up being so different, but that was sort of the general sentiment at the time because they were so similar. And it was like, it was sort of like Steve Young being brought in to replace Joe Montana, like, which I think would Bill would get, and some people in the chat. But really, it was like the backup quarterback that was being brought in as the new one, as the old one, the one who won so many times was leaving. And Lorne Michaels, for anything you want to criticize over the last 10 years of certain casting decisions, made an incredible choice to bring on Kate McKinnon at the time that he brought her on the show, because she mixed in with this group of absolute legends and just killed it. And I can go through, and we will, the original sketches that she did in the late season 37, season 38, season 39, before things got so political. And she had character after character after character. And we are in an era now where there are really not many characters. But Kate McKinnon, you can see how she blended these two eras, and she could overall, it summarizes for me, Kate McKinnon could have fit in any era of Saturday Night Live. She would have been great in the original cast, in the cast of the late 80s. She could have done anything at any time. And I think that's what makes her definitely a first ballot Hall of Famer for me, and one of the all-time greats. Okay, let's talk about her first episode a little bit, some of the early moments in her career. So a lot of people think that her first sketch was the sketch that she did with Sofia Vergara, where she was playing Penelope Cruz. I'm sure we all watched this to get ready for the show. And I thought this was so funny because this was the standout sketch for her in her first episode that really made her pop. She had this moment.
No, Penelope, it's phytomorphogenesis.
Refrigerator.
No.
Where she could not pronounce any of the words in any of the Pantene ingredients that she was doing. And it really made her pop. And everyone's like, wow, this cast member is incredible. But she actually did appear in 2 sketches earlier in the night. She was in a Road to the White House sketch about Mitt Romney's speeches at the time. Obviously, she was known for playing Ann Romney. That was one of her first political impressions she did early in her career, where Kate was in the background. And she was also in a Watch What Happens Live sketch with Andy Cohen, where she played Tabitha Coffey.
Hello, I'm Tabitha Coffey, and this week I'm taking over a business run by 2 sisters who are complete dodo heads.
And that was her first episode. I mean, just a huge mark on her first episode at the show. And then, had a bunch of characters after that. So, Morgan, I will start with you. Let me head over to you. Is there anything from earlier on in Kate McKinnon's career that you want to talk about as a standout moment?
Well, just right there in that episode, I mean, she, her thing is accents. And if you've seen on Ellen before, she did a heads up where she had to do all these different accents and say all these different things. And she literally did every accent from every country, everywhere. And right there, SNL really utilized her accents with the Australian accent and then with the Penelope Cruz. So I think that right away they were taking what she's really good at and finding a place for that. So you could just tell that they knew that she was going to be special when she started with those impressions, because accents and impressions are her go-tos. So I think that really made her shine right out of the gate.
For sure. Rebecca, what about you? Anything from earlier in her career that you want to point out, whether it's, what we just discussed or another moment?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, even based off that accents thing, I mean, her first episode, they introduced this brand new, and I'm even reading in the chat that there was not a lot to be known about Kate McKinnon in the past. They bring this brand new white woman, and they're like, here, play a Spanish woman. That is so ballsy for the first sketch on SNL. I would be terrified, but Kate has such a special thing where she never bordered on offensive for having this wide range of accents and impressions that were not in her nationality, which you can kind of teeter on the edge. But her first breakout sketch was her impersonating Penelope Cruz, which was kind of a wild play for her to be okay with. I mean, you're going to take anything at that point. And for SNL to be like, hi, this is Kate. She's going to impersonate her. But she always did it with such grace that it never became offensive, at least from what I've read. I don't know as much, but internet's wild, and I'm sure we would have read a lot about that. But I think kind of having her do, my timing might be wrong, but my first memory of Kate is her and Kristen Wiig doing the Whiskers Are We sketch. And it's both of them, I have it up somewhere, both of them selling cats for not selling, giving cats up for adoption. And they're just these 2 old cat ladies, where stereotypical cat ladies, where it's the funniest I ever remember Kate McKinnon being. And it was kind of the passing the torch down from Kristen Wiig to her to have this, where Kate then picked up that character. I think it seems like Barbara I wrote this down. Drew, yeah. She even brought it back for COVID times. So having such a strong, iconic character over the course of 10 years that she was able to re-reference in 2020 just showed how great Kate and how valued she was her first season.
For sure. So I actually think that the Kristen Wiig, Barbara DeDrew was when Kristen actually came back to host that
That's
time.
what I thought, but then I didn't know
Yeah.
if they did it earlier also.
Yeah, so they did it a couple times before that, but that is a great example of an early sketch of a character that Kate McKinnon had done on the show. I think the first one she did was with Charlize Theron, which I think that's right. And that was always a very interesting character for me. It was one of many that she had earlier on in her run, but yeah, really love Barbara DeDrew. We did get to see it again, as Rebecca mentioned, during COVID times. But here's a little bit of Barbara DeDrew.
So come on down to our spring adopt-a-thon weekend. If you buy one cat, we make you take all of them for free.
Yes, it was very fun. And she always had that relationship with the host during that particular sketch where the host would be coming on to Barbara DeDrew, but she was really just there for the cats. So I always thought that was a really fun thing from that particular sketch. Bill, what about you? Any other characters, moments from earlier on in Kate's career that you would like to start off with?
Well, John, first of all, you're 100% correct. I can remember exactly where I was when I heard about them bringing her on. And it's a little bit of PTSD when they say they're going to bring somebody on before a season's over, because that goes back to, season 19, season 20. They're bringing Molly Shannon on, and they're bringing Mark McKinney on because they're not sure how many of these people they're going to keep. And, there was rumors that Kristen was going to leave. There was no definite plan that she was going to leave at that point, but it was clear that's what they were going for. And to see her in that first show as Penelope Cruz was fantastic. Not a great episode from what I recall, other than that. But the first really strong impression she made on me was she broke out the following fall. Was the beginning of her Last Call episodes or Last Call sketches, and that's when we first see Sheila Sovage, and she killed that right from the beginning as well. And I think the big difference between her and Kristen, we can get into this more later, but she's almost the anti-Kristen with the recurring characters. As going back, looking at all these different sketches, she never did any of these sketches more than twice in a season. There was never this beating over the head of, and that's not the performer's fault necessarily, but there was never 5, 6 in a season. There was never, 20 Night at the Roxbury's in a row. It was twice a season, usually at the beginning and the end, and that was it. And that's what they did with Last Call as well. And they carried that on all the way through 2019. And I think even though a lot of people were hoping that she'd bring it back for the last episode, the way it ended with her and Sandler and Kristen Wiig and Keenan, you've got, 4 goats of SNL all together, 3 from different eras, just absolutely killing it with this ridiculous, you're the last person in a bar, I'm going to make out with you, and God help me for doing it. As a former bartender, I always relate it to having to see that terrible nonsense at the end of a night. So that was really true to life and always funny.
Yeah, I think the great thing about the Sheila Sauvage thing was the first episode she did this, I believe, was in the Louis C.K. episode of season 38, right. Which a different perspective on that episode now. Yeah. But back in the day, when we were watching that episode, season 38, the thought was, it was really the first time we saw Kate McKinnon do physical comedy. And I think that that's something that she became known for so much after, with the Ellens and the Justin Biebers and stuff, which we may get into, which was just, her making out with these hosts. And, that was something that in a way I compared to the previous eras where we had the Kissing Family and stuff like that. That's something that they were willing to be ballsy and they were willing to go out and do anything. And up to that point, I think it was season 38, episode 6. So it was really just 10 episodes into her SNL career, something like that. Up to that point, we saw her play characters. We saw her play or impressions. I mean, she did Anne Romney. She did this Cecilia Jimenez, the one with the that botched the painting of Jesus on Weekend Update. This one.
Look at me with his enormous round monkey face. And poor Jesus.
That she did on Weekend Update, and she had these moments, but it was really, in my opinion, the Sheila Sauvage thing that just changed the game for everybody. The fact that she was willing to go out there and just crush it on screen. Morgan, what did you think of these Sheila Sauvage sketches that we got when we saw her just making out with all these hosts?
It's I feel like when there was such a prominent I guess guy figure hosting, I think she did one with Larry David too. You had a feeling maybe that this was going to happen. or shoot, they were going to do the sketch. And like right away, like, you know what you're in for if you've seen the first one of her doing it, but there's always like, they make it different. Like they do like really different, weird physical things and weird different kissing. And yeah, you never, like, you know what you're going to expect with Kate. That's the thing, but you also never know what you're going to expect. So that's what I love about that one. And I mean, yeah, that one's just always hilarious to me to see like how the host interacts with her and things like that.
For sure. Morgan, is there another early Kate McKinnon SNL career moment that you would like us to talk about?
I'm trying to think of her early ones. This might be like more in the middle, but yeah, like you guys said with like the politics and stuff, like she's done so many amazing politicians like Angela Merkel and RBG. And I think that those are more kind of in the middle. And then obviously Hillary is like unreal. Best impression I think ever. But yeah, definitely like her RBG and things like that.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So we will get into those because I think that those were, I don't know what the right terminology is, but some of the less controversial impressions that she did. I think those were probably a little bit lighter because, for me, I can divide this into sections, which is, she had the Cecilia Jimenez that I brought up, the Sheila Sovage. Let's talk a little bit about something I brought up prior, which was the Ellen impression and the Justin Bieber impression, because I think for me, those were the things that really, those blew up more than some of the other celebrity impressions that I had seen at the time. Ellen DeGeneres kept playing the impression that Kate did of Ellen on her show. Justin Bieber at the time, I don't know if there was a good Justin Bieber impression out there, but the way that Kate did it and the physical comedy of, him looking at the camera and all that stuff, there was just nothing like that out there. Rebecca, when you saw those impressions back in the day, how did they work for you?
Yeah, well, I even think like Kate did a good job of bringing her impressions into the mainstream. So the fact that she's leaving the show and Hillary Clinton posted with her on Instagram a picture of her impersonating her, and Ellen had her on as a guest as Ellen. And they were going back and forth being like, I'm Ellen. And literally like in the chair on the show, not even SNL, that she brought it into such mainstream that people now like Chloe Feynman are doing. She's going on these late shows and doing impressions of people, but Kate was like the trailblazer for that, because I feel like, especially a little while ago, a lot of celebrities like to like separate themselves from SNL within their other shows. And I know Ellen was not an SNL cast member, had her own show, but she still was drawn so much to Kate because of such a strong impression. And even being like a young girl who like loved Justin Bieber, and then seeing like the Calvin Klein commercial sticks out to me as Kate's best Justin Bieber impression. Like, she just did such a good job that like she always put the Kate spin on it. So we weren't lost in the fact that like, yeah, we know it's not Justin Bieber. It was always Kate McKinnon playing Justin Bieber. But that's where the magic was. That's why, because as I said before, like even if a politician that I didn't know anything about when came on the screen, it would still be Kate playing the politician. So it's always funny that way. And sometimes I feel like that people don't like that with impressions, but no one has ever really had that problem with Kate because it just knows it's going to be killer either way.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, Bill, the fact that they had Kate McKinnon do Justin Bieber at the SNL 40th anniversary, when they had Norm up there. Obviously, Will was back as the host of Celebrity Jeopardy. And I did pull the Justin Bieber from SNL 40.
Then don't buzz in, okay? No one has to buzz in.
But I know adventures, and I want you to come with me on the next one, girl.
So, I mean, just it really solidified. Again, she was so young in her SNL career at the time. Like, we didn't know she was going to stay another 7 seasons or 8 seasons, but just these impressions that she was doing of these celebrities at the time, she was the biggest star on Saturday Night Live, really from practically the moment she got on the show, Bill. It was very impressive to see the start of her career.
Oh, without question. And, kind of to go with what Rebecca's saying, if she didn't know a politician, if you straight up hate somebody and somebody can do an impression of them and you still like it, that's how I felt about Bieber, because I'd rather poke my eyes out than see Bieber. And I just don't like him. I don't like the way he acts. That's not an old man thing. I like a lot of current musicians, just to be clear. But it was just something about the way she portrayed him that made it so funny and found a way, to really encapsulate the person that he was at that time. And the same with Ellen. I mean, it was just really something to see. Going back and watching some of those old Ellen sketches from early on, she nailed it. Like there was, no differentiation between the two people, the way she was able to do it.
Yeah. And Bill, is there anything else? I mean, I know Morgan brought up earlier the Angela Merkel stuff, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Is there anything else pre-season 41, 42, the elections, where, the career arc started to change? Any sketches that you want to bring up? Any other moments?
Well, I think we have to bring up the Halloween party with Jim Carrey, where she is dressed as the kid from the Sia video. Where I mean, Chandelier, you could not escape in 2014. It was everywhere. And to have her come out in this skin tight outfit that this kid wore in the Chandelier video, and then to see Jim Carrey come out in the same exact thing, and not just do that, but break the fourth wall, go on to the other stages, dance in front of Lauren and try to talk him into it, dance in front of Iggy Azalea, who's also wearing the same thing. Was just so fantastic. I think that was 2014. And it was just absolutely amazing to see her go toe to toe with one of the greatest comedians of the last 25 years and not miss a beat. That's one of my favorite sketches of hers for sure.
Yeah, that is a great early Kate McKinnon sketch. That's just really fantastic. I love the physical comedy there as well, Bill. Morgan, anything else pre-election for you? Anything like that you want to talk about?
The one Weekend Update character, I think that this was before the election, like the Russian lady that she would always do, Olya Povlatsky. I think that's
Olya Povlatsky. Yeah.
Yes, that she was on Update with that. Like I think like at least 5 times maybe. That one was always hilarious, and her and Colin would like always go back and forth during that. And that's again her accents. Like she can literally be anybody, whether it's Ellen or a random Russian lady. So like that just shows how talented that she is. But yeah, she's had some like funky characters, obviously, that we've seen. And even just like with the little sketches that she used to do with like the high school theater showcase ones, and like just so many just little ones in between that just like she would just bring light to every sketch and really put her own spin on things.
For sure. I loved the Olya Povlatsky ones. Those were so funny at the time.
I'm surprised anyone come to Russia. I spend my whole life praying, take me away from this horrible place.
Yeah, and that was before what's happening now in Russia. So that was very timely from Kate McKinnon. But yeah, there was a lot of fun that we had there, early stuff. I know there was also a Billy, what was it that she did for the Sochi Olympics? They'll come back to me, but I'll get right back to that. Billie Jean King that she did for the Sochi Olympics. Yeah, that was also a big one at the time. Rebecca, anything else from you pre-season 42, 41, where she started really doing all the election stuff?
Well, it's an impression from after, but nothing to do with politics.
Okay.
There's this Jurassic Park sketch where they're like recasting, and for some reason it's like one of my favorites because the impressions are so funny. And Kate does this Lisa Kudrow impression, and it was like I've never heard her do it at another point, and she just did it there, and it was like so spot on. I like did a double take, and then I was rewatching it back because I thought the impression made such an impact on me that like I thought she did it multiple times throughout SNL. And I think it was for that like 10-second bit on the Jurassic Park one. But I would go back and rewatch that because it just goes to show like if you close your eyes, you would never in a million years know it was Kate McKinnon.
For sure. Yeah. She's just an excellent impressionist. Really one of the best that the show has had. Okay. So yeah, the beginning of her career, I think that to sum it up for me, at least, I sort of feel that she made it much easier for everyone who did love that previous era to stick with the show. She was an amazing person to transition over. Like I said, quickly became the star of the show and really fit in seamlessly with the previous era. She was doing all these characters the same way that they were as well. And then, we sort of had a little bit of a pivot in the tone of Saturday Night Live around the time of the 2016 election. And, it started as like, okay, there's all these big characters that are, running for president. And we had all of these cast members, doing some fun. And, all of a sudden we see Kate McKinnon doing a Hillary Clinton impression, which is one of the most, Hillary Clinton is one of the most impersonated people ever on Saturday Night Live, going back to the days in the 80s of Jan Hooks doing Hillary Clinton. Obviously, Amy Poehler's Hillary Clinton was a very famous impression. So, for Kate McKinnon to then take this role of hers, which to me was really her most iconic role on the show, was really interesting. Would love to get the panel's opinion on the arc of her playing Hillary Clinton throughout her time at SNL. But let me just play some clips, and I guess I'll play some others as we get through our discussion. Let me start with the first time Kate McKinnon played Hillary Clinton on the show, and this is season 39. So this is about 2.5 years, even before she did the whole election stuff really started getting a little bit crazy. So this is Kate as Hillary.
Hello, Barack.
Hello, Hillary.
I just wanted to let you know that I'm running for president in 2016.
So already, she ran for president at, 2008. So this was something that was already, brewing and stuff like that. And we could see the seeds of what was going to come. Kate McKinnon landed this huge impression on the show, and she was going to be a very big part of the 2016 election coverage. Bill, starting with you, let's talk about Kate McKinnon as Hillary Clinton and her arc on the show.
Well, I mean, the only other time you can really point to this, although there's been plenty of times that somebody had to take over a presidential or candidate role, the Amy to Kate thing was seamless, even though it was a few years in between. The only other time really was, Phil to Daryl for Bill Clinton, which is funny enough. But I think she made it her own. She had her own motions. She had her own that scary laugh that she would do, the hand wave. She really kind of got into the later Hillary Clinton nuances that had changed even in 8 years since Amy had done it. And some of those debates, even though obviously they got very bloated, they got, cold opens were 12, 15 minutes long. But, the stuff that she would do with, Larry David as Bernie Sanders, and they had Julie Louis-Dreyfus in one of them as well. And they were really, really funny, really smart, way over long, but they found a way to make it work at the beginning. I would have loved to be able to see in a less dark timeline how she would have played Hillary as president for 4 or 8 years, because I really think she would have killed it and made it her own.
Yeah, would be really fascinating to think about that other timeline where Kate is still playing the president right now. Morgan, how do you feel about Kate's Hillary impression and what you saw from Kate playing Hillary on the show, and any moments that stand out to you?
Well, I mean, yeah, the pass off with Amy, like Bill said, was very natural and seamless to me. I personally think that Kate does a better impression of Hillary. She matched her voice and her laugh, her mannerisms literally perfectly. And I would actually enjoy watching the debates because, we were in such a crazy time during that. So to go to SNL and watch it and get some comedic relief out of it was very, very nice. And it was more comforting because obviously Kate was playing Hillary. But yeah, her impression of her is just amazing. And I love now that they're just friends, and Hillary respects Kate so much and adores her impression of her. But yeah, I guess one of my favorite Hillary moments actually was one of the pre-tapes that she did. And it was the Hillary Actually one. I think that's one of my all-time favorite Hillary pre-tapes there were. Just because it was so raw and everything, if you remember on the pieces of the paper, were just how everyone at home was feeling in a way. Not everybody, but she really just spoke for how people were feeling in the moment. And yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah, definitely. Rebecca, any Hillary moments that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, it started off as an impression, right? It was a seamless transition, and Kate did a good job. But as Morgan started to touch on it, it became more than that. It became not only an impression, such an admiration for Hillary to really embody her and become Hillary on the show. And there were so many political, emotional ties to the character where now they do have a friendship, and Hillary has reaches, like, her and Kate are friends, and at least in my mind, or at least they portrayed on social media that they're friends with each other, and there's such a respect there. But I think the pretty concrete point that changed it from an impression to like an embodiment was the election week cold open. So it was the SNL episode right after the election where Hillary lost, and it started where she's Kate's as Hillary, and she's just performing Hallelujah on the piano. It's somber, but it's also still an impression, but it's past the point of impression because you're also feeling Kate's emotions about Hillary's loss through that. And it's like literally I get the chills like thinking about it now still, because it just was one of those times after a hard part just in the world in general, just because there's so much tension, whether or not like the election turned out in your favor, and not fully commenting on it, but like speaking louder than that. And it really solidified this as an impression, like, at least in my opinion or my knowledge, like I've never seen such an emotional ties to an impression on the show before.
Yeah, I think it's as close to a method impression as we've seen on the show. And I definitely want to, get into that moment, because I think that was probably the most memorable moment in Kate McKinnon's SNL career. I think, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, people are always going to remember that moment. And it was a pivot point for me, in Saturday Night Live's history, which I think, as they tell the story of the show, I think this is a very important moment for the show. I think we would be remiss not to talk about, there was a moment prior to this in season 41 where Hillary, Kate is playing Hillary at a bar, and Hillary Clinton actually does show up as Val.
Hi, I'm Hillary Rodham Clinton. Hey, great name. I'm Val.
And I think that was the moment that really solidified. I mean, we've had that in the past before, but this was a really, this is when things were still fun. And I think that was a really fun moment for the character, the impression character that really Kate was putting together. But yeah, let's get back to this moment in 2016, when it's the night that Dave Chappelle hosts Saturday Night Live, a very iconic episode. And, we have this cold open that opens up, and Kate McKinnon's like playing the piano, and she sings Hallelujah. And the singing in this sketch, we weren't, having the SNL Network hot take shows at the time, but I think I would have said that night that was the most fascinating part of all this is that she was singing as Hillary Clinton, not as Kate McKinnon. Like, you could hear it in the singing, which was so impressive about that. And, she obviously ends with this very emotional moment afterwards.
I'm not giving up, and neither should you. And live from New York, it's Saturday night.
And it was this huge emotional moment for everyone at SNL. And just as a commentator, I mean, I have to say, like, really, fascinating stuff to go look at, because there are emotional moments in the, 30, 40 years at the time of the show, 42 years. But I definitely still struggled. I struggled then, and I struggle now with trying to determine if this was the right thing for Saturday Night Live to do at the time. I think people have so many opinions about it. I think Kate felt like she was trying to portray the sentiment of a lot of people in this country, but I always do question if that was Saturday Night Live's job to do that at the time. Are they supposed to be commenting on what's happening and make it humorous, or are they just supposed to take a certain perspective and amplify it? Bill, would love to get your opinion on that moment in terms of the history of the show and what it meant for Kate.
It's an unprecedented moment. I mean, it's through the looking glass, at least from the perspective of like, this was something they had never done before. They may have shown their leanings for certain candidates here or there. But other than serious tragedies like 9/11 and coming back after that, they didn't lean into this kind of, sad, divisive even moment that they had. To me, it's one of my favorite things. I know how I felt that week, and being able to go to Saturday Night Live, I feel like that's with any of the late night shows, whether you watch Colbert or Fallon, back then Letterman, you kind of look to those people for kind of a relief, even though you don't know them personally. You're looking for some kind of catharsis, and I think people needed that week. And it still holds up to me, and it still chokes me up a little bit to hear it now. So,
yeah, Yeah, that's a very interesting perspective, and I think that the word "needed" is something that I think is a great descriptor of that moment, because people were just looking for something. They were looking for some commentary, and at the time, a lot of people felt like Chappelle's monologue was also something that they needed, like his commentary on it. There was the sketch about what it was like to be there the night of the election that they did. That was just a really memorable, historic episode of the show. Morgan, anything else that sorry, Rebecca, do you want to go first? Anything else you'd like to comment on that moment at the show?
Well, also, I did want to point that Hillary did a year later, or about a year later, on Jimmy Fallon. Yeah, she said she teared up the first time while watching that episode in that cold open, and she said that she, quote, really wishes she had Kate's talent. So this is coming from Hillary. I wish I had her talent. She's just an amazing person, and she sat there playing Hallelujah. That was hard. That was just really hard. And yes, I do think it can get tricky, but I think the state of the world was probably different then than even more the politics during 9/11, because there was such a sense of U.S. pride and American spirit there right after 9/11. So yes, it was political, but it wasn't the main driving factor. It was more like, let's bond together as a nation. While the state of the world in the 2016 election was like the messiest that I think it's been in a lot of the years of SNL, and the world is split, and their sketches were always leaning left in that sort of stance. And I wasn't surprised that they took their side, but I do think with that election especially, it wasn't necessarily political parties. I think it was people and their beliefs, because even people that would have probably voted Republican weren't happy at that time either. And it wasn't necessarily like blue or red. There was so much just in between that I don't think anyone was happy, because the world was just depressing, whether or not like you got what you wanted. Like, people just weren't happy. And I think the song resonated, and I think her not speaking as Hillary but singing as Hillary, what didn't make it as divided, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah. Morgan, what about you? What's your opinion on this?
Yeah, on this whole episode, I feel like this episode was just like very relatable in a way, like how they did the sketch with like how people were feeling on election night, and then with Kate literally crying at the screen, almost saying live from New York. So like, I just think that they tried to make the episode more like relatable and emotional, but also try to get people smiling in a way, or feel like there's a sense of hope. And I think that's what Hallelujah did, especially coming from Hillary as Kate. But yeah, I thought that, like, when I remember watching it, and I cry when I see someone else cry. So just seeing her almost like crying, saying live from New York, just like really stuck with me for like always. And back when she just closed out her last cold open, she also was crying, saying live from New York. And it kind of reminded me of the Hallelujah live from New York.
Yeah, that is true. Those are two moments that are very well connected. And I think, you could draw a line between them. So I guess for me, and I totally resonate with everybody, what they're saying, at the time, I was certainly feeling it too. It was a weird, time for everybody. And I think that, watching it, I felt emotional, but I did feel like I said, this was a change in tone for Kate McKinnon. This was a change in tone for the show itself. And you saw that be drawn out for a while. And I guess, the major storyline, the major, thing you were thinking about at the time was, okay, but like, what is SNL going to do from here, right? It's not like that, 2016 election happened, Kate McKinnon came on as Hillary Clinton, and that was the series finale of Saturday Night Live. It was, like, there's still more episodes to make, right? And they're going to figure out how to cover all this stuff. And I remember thinking at the time, I was like, I don't know if Kate McKinnon can play Hillary Clinton again, because like, what is there left to do with the Hillary Clinton impression? And she would go on to do it a few more times, and there would be moments. But really, this is sort of when SNL began to pivot to, holy crap, this is what the world is now. How are we going to cover it? Right? How are we going to cover this Trump administration? And I think Kate McKinnon's decision to play a lot of the members of the, Trump administration team was really just, led to probably some of the better moments that SNL chose to cover this, as opposed to, some of the people that were brought in from the outside. So, Rebecca, were there any impressions politically for you throughout this administration that you really enjoyed getting to see from Kate?
I loved her Rudy Giuliani impression. Like, it gets me every time. And obviously a lot of it's super exaggerated, but also so much of it isn't. And the fact that she does such a good job where obviously you're looking at her and it's not Rudy Giuliani, but it's also not. And I don't know, you guys are normal, so you probably don't watch The Masked Singer, but I do. And Rudy Giuliani, do you watch it? Well, Rudy Giuliani was on it, and I'm just so upset that we won't be able to see Kate unmasked on SNL as Rudy Giuliani, which would have been such an amazing sketch. But like, even just thinking about her dressed in that and imagine like the hair dye dripping down, like it's just making all of us laugh right now.
Yes, yeah, that was a very very weird one. I remember, I forget who was said. I think it was potentially I heard it in a podcast where James Andrew Miller was talking about the thing that seemed to piss off the Trump administration the most about Saturday Night Live at the time, and I think it was the fact that Kate McKinnon and some of the female cast members were playing the men in the administration. I think he was saying that that's what SNL always felt like really pissed them off more than anything. And I think that there was just this thing, Bill, that was like, we're going to have some fun with these people, and I don't care if it pisses them off because that is what we do here at Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, and I think it was a brilliant move, despite what some people think that Kate stayed too long or, that they lean too much into the Trump stuff, to be able to turn to your star performer and say, listen, I need a Lindsey Graham this week. You got a Lindsey Graham? And she would do it. Or I need a Wilbur Ross. Like, who the hell wants to play Wilbur Ross? But she did it. And I think that's fascinating that, even with all the male cast members they had, they turned to Kate for a lot of this. And she killed it every time. No matter how nefarious the person she was playing. My favorite of this group that she did was Jeff Sessions, because she played him as the Keebler elf, basically. And I found that hilarious, especially the one where he's supposed to be Forrest Gump. And he's, sitting on a bench talking to Leslie Jones and, life's like a box of chocolates. There sure is a lot of brown ones in here. And she just gives that Leslie Jones look to him. And, this is the kind of stuff she was able to pull off on a week-to-week basis, no matter who they had to cover. And it was a million times better than bringing in Ben Stiller or Robert De Niro.
Yeah, for sure. I just think by comparison, that stuff was so powerful that she was doing in terms of playing all these people. It was really like the hidden gems in this, time that I think you would have seen in previous administrations that SNL was covering. That was sort of, maybe potentially soiled by some of the decisions that were being made to bring in these outside people. Morgan, was there anything from you from the Trump administration that Kate McKinnon was involved in that you particularly enjoyed?
I'll say someone that we haven't talked about yet, Kellyanne Conway. Okay. Her impression of Conway. Yeah, I see someone in the chat. Loved the Chicago spinoff on that. But yeah, she's played her live a couple great times, but a lot of her Kellyanne pre-tapes were like so spot on. I think it was like one day when it was like a day in the life of Kellyanne Conway, and they were like just going through her day. And then obviously the Chicago spiff was just great. And then you just remember that one time when she's just like sitting on the Weekend Update desk, like texting, like that meme of Kellyanne. Yeah. So, and that was with no words. So just to I don't even know what I'm trying to say right now, but all of her Kellyanne bits were amazing. And I mean, I think Kellyanne have tweeted and stuff that she was like upset about it and didn't like it. But that just made it even more fun to watch, to like ruffle people's feathers. But yeah, the Kelly Wise too. See the chat knows what's up.
Yeah, wait, the Kelly Wise though, she pulled double duty, which was the craziest part, where she did both Hillary Clinton and Kellyanne Conway at the same time, like spoofing the movie It. And weirdly had Anderson Cooper impression in it too, but the whole thing was just so good. Like when I think of Kellyanne Conway, I imagine her coming out of the sewer because of Kate's impression in my head. But also the same way that Hillary loves Kate, Kellyanne Conway cannot stand Kate McKinnon and was super vocal about it on Twitter throughout, especially like the most recent times. She just started going off and she hates Kate McKinnon with passion.
Yeah, I do have a clip of Kate as Kellyanne Conway for the podcast.
Actually, no, it's not. And the thing to remember about Russia is that we won. And I don't know why you keep bringing up the election.
She's so good at the impression, and her vocal mannerisms are incredible. Bill, any other moments from the Trump administration with Kate McKinnon that you would want to bring up?
Well, I'll say about the Kelly Wise, I think that was one of the best pieces they've done in the last 5 years, 6 years. Not only did she have the intonation of her voice right, but she was going back and forth between being Kellyanne Pennywise and Kellyanne Conway with the softer voice and the, oh my God, we're doing. So she really found a way to do it. I know it was pre-tape, but she was able to do those two voices and two characters, having Hillary Clinton in there as well. Nothing really else comes to mind. I feel like it was just kind of beaten into the ground, but Kate always came. She was never the problem in any of these sketches.
For sure. And I think that, when we got finally to 2020, I think they did try and recapture some of the magic with Kate as Elizabeth Warren, trying to find, in that impression, can they get something really big out of that? And I think, Elizabeth Warren came on the show once. I think they really enjoyed her impression. Here's a little bit of Kate as Elizabeth Warren.
In middle school, I was the girl who would do this. Excuse me, he's writing on the desk.
And, she played Elizabeth on Update and in election coverage, and there was some fun there. And it was really, obviously had Elizabeth Warren gotten elected, that would have been, a lot more we would have seen from Kate McKinnon there. So always interesting to think about those moments as well. But I really found that, the next part of Kate McKinnon's career at the show, which ended up being, who knows if COVID may have prolonged it, but, post-Trump election, I think we just saw this vulnerability in Kate McKinnon that started with the Trump election, but carried on to COVID, where she just talks about how tired she is at the show. And we saw this with the Wayne We Notice on Weekend Update. And she did this, cold open during season 46 about if things work or not anymore. And, Rebecca, I just sort of felt like, this was the point in the fan community where we started watching this, wondering, does Kate have anything left to give at the show at this point?
My favorite sketch of all time is the Dr. We Notice on Update.
Wow.
No,
Okay.
My Wi-Fi name is called Dr. We Notice. My roommate, we're obsessed with it. And it was just such a good way. And I think at that kind of rate, there was a lot of just people being raw who've been even Cecily doing the stuff on Update about abortion as a clown. This was Kate being a doctor and then just completely breaking character and being I can't do this anymore with COVID, completely being vulnerable, but then we're also still laughing throughout that. And it's one of my favorites. And even her most recent, it could be her last one, is the Don't Say Gay. She came on as Kate McKinnon, which is kind of solidifying for me. She's leaving because Kate has done every single type of impression and character, and now she's playing herself. And she's just talking about how these laws that are so close to her, especially being, as I said before, the first openly gay SNL female SNL cast member, going on there and talking about these don't say gay laws in Texas and Florida, and going off about that and just being so raw and vulnerable, but also being so funny was kind of warming to me, because I do agree that I don't know how much more she could have given or even wanted to give at that point, but her coming on just being herself, it kind of was wrapped it up more for me and showed that vulnerability for one last time.
Yeah. Bill, I sort of feel like, Kate had some hidden gems probably over the last couple of years that we can point to, but really for the most part, she was just such a different cast member near the end of her career than she was at the beginning, that it was I felt like if we were going to see Kate, there had to be some element of Kate McKinnon in whatever she was doing on the show.
Yeah, and I started to notice this. She came back late this year and, had so much screen time in Billie Eilish. But then after that, I kind of had this sense where, I said this on one of the roundtables, where she was kind of fading into the background a little bit. Not completely, but she was kind of going a la Phil Hartman, where she wasn't the lead in every sketch. She wasn't, carrying every sketch. She was letting the newer people do it. And it almost felt like a passing of the torch. And whether she was going to leave after 2020, if everything had gone, COVID hadn't happened or not, to have her have this kind of last victory lap and yet let the new people do their thing as well. I found that pretty fascinating.
Yeah, definitely. Morgan, what I would love to do is go around the round table and talk about any other sketches or moments from Kate's SNL career that we haven't gotten to yet. Is there anything left on your list you want to make sure that we talk about tonight?
Definitely RBG and a lot of the like music video pre-tapes that are like legendary, like Back Home Ballers, Do It in My Twin Bed, Crucible Cast Party, like all of those like songs Kate's involved in. And yeah, I guess we'll dig deeper.
Okay, well, let's do that right now with you. So what about those really stood out to you? Yeah.
Well, just in general, when they have these music videos, they get a bunch of people cast in them. This obviously like songs just stick with you. And I just remember seeing the Back Home Ballers one, like, and I think I was a Back Home Baller at that time. So I was like, holy crap, like this is so relatable. And the way that they just portrayed it with Cameron Diaz, I just remember being amazing. And that's a sketch that I would probably go back like every year and rewatch it and like listen to it. And same with like the Do It in My Twin Bed. I think that one was like way earlier on. And with Jimmy Fallon, that one's just another legendary one. And I feel like we don't always get a lot of the music video ones. So when they do hit, they really hit. And I definitely think that those totally are memorable.
For sure. And I do love that you brought up RBG, which we talked a little bit about prior, but we did get a Ginsburg one last time in this season.
And that's a Ginsburg.
With her iconic dancing. That was from this season of the show. So that was a lot of fun. Rebecca, anything else on your list you want to make sure that we talk about from Kate McKinnon?
One older sketch that I guess I should have brought up earlier is Kate doing Teresa Caputo's The Long Island Medium is still one of the funniest sketches because I actually like have met Teresa a bunch because we go to the same hair place on Long Island and her daughter works there. And so it's so spot on. It's actually scary. And that's one of probably the earliest impressions that I'd imagine Kate doing. Like, in my head, I would be like, oh, who's Kate McKinnon? She's the one that did the Long Island Medium sketch. Like, that's where I really associated her, like, early on, that it was and it was a one and done impression, and that's all we needed. We wouldn't have really wanted more of that. So that one was like gold.
Yeah, that was really, really good. Bill, what about you? More stuff on your list?
Oh, wait, Rebecca, does she go up to you and say, your boyfriend's a mess? You know, he needs to get it. And
she hasn't done using her powers on me, unfortunately.
that line
fortunately.
That line from Bobby Moynihan when she's talking about him as if he's dead and the camera pans over, he's like, hey, F you.
So good.
Yeah, two more.
Okay.
I'll say John mentioned in the chat, Debette Goldry. And that started before me too, which is kind of funny and then they kind of weaved it into everything that was happening at the time with Harvey Weinstein. But the ancient actress who couldn't understand it, Kate plays this part so well where she is shocked by the people around her. You know, they're talking about, they couldn't get a water in their dressing room. And she's like, that's what you're upset about? I had to lay down on the ground and, do whatever this man told me to do. But the other one that I like, and it's another one-off impression, pretty early on, where she plays Robert Durst. They're at an improv show, and it's Adie and Pete and Kyle and Beck. And Robert Durst, if you don't remember, the star of the Jinx, he killed his first wife, and then he killed his neighbor. And it was a pretty famous HBO documentary that he kind of ratted on himself at the time. And she played it perfectly. She did the voice perfectly. And, everybody that was in the sketch was so good. He's sitting on the stage talking about chopping up his neighbor, and Adie's like, oh, well, you sounds like you have a bad day, and nobody's fazed by the fact that he's talking about murder and everything like that. But she only did that once, and it was great. She was a really good impressionist at one and done. It didn't have to be, as she became later on doing these characters 20, 30 times, she did a lot in the early days where she just did it once and that was it.
For sure. I think that there's a couple other moments we have to talk about. One, of course, mentioned briefly earlier, but we have to talk about Colleen Rafferty, which we didn't really talk about tonight, of course, which is, probably her most iconic character on the show. And this was something that I think was the one exception to our discussion of her arc at the show, which this is a character that premiered like very close to the coverage of the 2016 election. This is right prior during the Ryan Gosling episode around Christmas time. And, you know, this character first comes out and we get a lot of really funny moments from that sketch.
I think he was the lookout. Look, it wasn't my worst Wednesday night.
Which is a very iconic line that a lot of people end up repeating. And of course, we always get these great moments from Colleen Rafferty.
So I had to just chill up there with my damn coot and prune shoe till the place opened up.
And I have to tell you, I had friends. I mean, we're talking about, I guess, you know, this was a few years into Kate McKinnon's career at the show, but I had friends who fell off of Saturday Night Live and they were texting me and being like, did you see what Kate McKinnon did on the show? And this was getting I think right now it has like 60 million YouTube views or something like that. I mean, this sketch went everywhere. The fact that Cecily Strong and Ryan Gosling, Aidy Bryant, and Bobby Moynihan were all breaking in this. This had Debbie Downer-like buzz in terms of the fact that the cast was just breaking at the moment. And it was just the beginning of like another hit. And, you know, like Bill said, she didn't really overdo it, but, you know, thankfully we got that last one near the end of her career where she said,
Thanks for letting me stay a while. Live from New York, it's Saturday night.
In her final episode at the show, and she did bring that character back. So she was going to bring one back. I do think this was, you know, potentially the right one. I mean, a lot of people were talking about her and Aidy Bryant's characters, Dyke and Fats, potentially to bring them back at some point, which I think a lot of people did like, but I don't know if they wanted to do that anymore. That seemed like an early career, you know, thing for them. But there was one other sketch that I just really wanted to, you know, to bring out and talk about, which is, it's a little bit obscure, but at the time I know it got a lot of buzz. And this was during November of 2018. There was a sketch where Jonah Hill hosted the show, and it was called Teacher Fell Down. I don't know if you guys ended up watching this one at all, but you know, she's a driver's ed teacher and she falls down, and there's this moment of like pure like you know, just angst as she's trying to figure out why she fell, and everyone, you know, Pete Davidson and Jonah Hill are just playing idiots that are just like telling her. And there's some really great lines in this one, and I think it's just one of those moments that you could just see her acting chops in. A little bit obscure for me, but just one of those great ones that I don't think gets brought up enough. But yeah, I mean, just all these crazy great moments in Kate McKinnon's career. Let's talk about her legacy on the show, how we're going to remember Kate McKinnon. So, Bill, would love to start with you on this one. Just to, you know, you've seen, like I said, so many different careers on the show. How do you think Kate McKinnon will be remembered? Where would you rank her all time on some of the greats?
I've thought about this a lot the last couple of days or the last couple of months. You know, I don't know if she's on Mount Rushmore, but if she's not, she's damn close. She is probably
Mount Rushmore. Just to clarify, you're saying top 4 cast member of all time,
right? Right.
Wow.
Yeah. She's definitely top 10 of all time, without a doubt to me. You know, not only the span of her career, what she was able to do on the show, her diversity, you know, her, again, longest running female cast member of all time. You know, the impression she was able to play. I don't know that we'll ever see the likes of somebody like her again. She was unique. She was able to do whatever was asked of her, as we've already said. But you know, the show will survive. And that's always a hard thing to kind of understand. And even with all the people that I've seen leave, it's always hard. I mean, it's, you know, I never thought it would survive after Dana Carvey or Will Ferrell or Phil Hartman, but it will. And, you know, when she comes back, it'll be that much sweeter. And it'll be interesting to see where she ranks with everybody.
Yeah, I would love to know who your Mount Rushmore, because I mean, top 4 cast member of all time. That's extremely high praise for Kate McKinnon, who I think is an all-time great, but I don't know if she cracks top 4 for me. Rebecca, what about you? Like, where does, you know, she rank, and how are you going to remember her career?
Yeah, Kate was definitely in my top 10, definitely like even top 5, I would say. Like she would likely be on my Mount Rushmore, but also that's who I grew up with. And that was like the first impressionable cast member. That was me watching in the moment and remembering, not watching old sketches or episodes. But I kind of think of Kate like a threefold kind of. First, I'll remember her for political impressions, which we dove deep into. Second, just her impersonations in general. And I'd say third, and even the sketches we were just talking about, is being the and I'm not like talking about her looks, I'm talking about the character she'd play. She played the ugly cast member. Like even in the Close Encounter sketches, they were all had magical experiences, and then Kate's was bad. Even in this one with Shud the Mermaid, which I know if you don't remember it, you'll look at the picture of Kate as the mermaid and it'll trigger in your mind. And it's two beautiful mermaids, and then Kate always coming in with the zingers. And they have 3 siblings that they're trying to marry their kid off to, and 2 are so beautiful, and 1 is like saying bizarre things to the prince. And it's always that. And I don't know who in the past and who in the future will have that title and that role as much as Kate does in my mind. I know there have been in the past that always that like kind of uglier character, but if I'm looking at the cast now, the female cast especially, you're looking at who will step into that role, and I don't even know. Like I would say Sarah Sherman's probably next in line to fill that spot, but I don't know if anyone could have it default and as legendary as Kate does.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. I guess we're gonna see. Morgan, what about you? Let's wrap up Kate McKinnon's career for you. Where do you rank her potentially, or how are you feeling about her overall?
I definitely agree with what a lot of you guys were saying. Jon, like you mentioned at the beginning, how Kate could have been in like any era of SNL. I do agree with that, but I do also agree that this time for her, this decade for her, like I think fit her amazingly, and she fit in perfectly also with all the political things happening. That obviously was like such a standout for her in her career in SNL, but also just in general as a comedian and as an actress. So I think that she definitely got what she wanted to get done, and her dream was always to be on SNL. And I'm sure that she had a lot of other goals and bucket list things to check off. And I feel like she did a lot of that. I mean, she got to play and impersonate such amazing people. I mean, also some people that aren't so amazing, but she got to really check a lot of things off of her bucket list. And I think that she was very, very satisfied kind of leaving, and she kind of did what she wanted to do. And I know that we were kind of talking about like how she was kind of fading away at the end. And I think it was almost because she was so in the spotlight for so long, for like that like 6-year period almost. Like she was always the front runner in all of the sketches, and all the eyes were always on her doing all of her impressions and with Hillary and everything. So I feel like also in real life, she is like a more closed off person. She doesn't do social media. She's very like to herself in private. So I feel like that kind of showed more towards the end when she was getting out of the spotlight, handing it over to some of the other cast members. So I feel like she went out the way that she wanted to go out, which is awesome for her. And she will definitely always be in like my top 5 for legends. And also, like Rebecca said, I grew up watching her. She was my girl. So obviously bittersweet, but she's done such amazing work on the show. And now she's going to continue that off the show.
For sure. And I agree, by the way. I think that she did go out exactly the way she wanted to. And I think that we should all be very happy for that, for Kate, that she's had her time, that she left the show. And I think, I do want to talk about when we're going to see Kate McKinnon next. I just know that the listeners are going to kill me if I don't push back on Bill on this. So I just have to know, Bill, if you, we don't have to stick with this, but if you had to name your top 4 SNL cast members of all time, could you do it for me, Bill?
Phil Hartman, Jan Hooks, John Belushi. I don't know if I can give you Will Ferrell. So
okay,
yeah,
so she's not on the list.
I said I didn't know that she would crack the Mount Rushmore, but she is definitely in the top 10 of all time.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, this is going to be controversial, but it'll be fun to talk about. I was thinking for me, I was trying to think so too. I mean, I don't have an official rankings of cast members all time. I do have statistics, obviously, to take a look at, in terms of, their time on the show and my overall impressions of them. I think it will make for great podcasting one day where definitely we would love the listeners to end up giving us some cast member rankings of all time. But I do think for me, the more that Bill talked about it, just because I love to hear these answers, Bill, I do think that she's closer to the Mount Rushmore than maybe I would have originally thought coming into this podcast. I think you can't leave out names like Phil Hartman. I think you can't leave out Bill Hader or Kenan Thompson at this point, probably as well. So those are names. And then I think, there's an argument somewhere going back to the beginning, making this full circle discussion on, Kristen Wiig versus Kate McKinnon about, which one ended up really having a better SNL career overall. And I think that, take your pick in terms of what you prefer as an SNL cast member, but certainly Kate McKinnon in terms of longevity and career arc had a very different arc than Kristen Wiig. So, they differentiated themselves pretty quickly once they got on there. And I think, there's a lot of great options potentially for Mount Rushmore. So it'll be fun to talk about. But Kate definitely has the accolades to make it onto a lot of people's Mount Rushmore. All right, let's talk about where we see Kate McKinnon pop up next on Saturday Night Live. So a lot of cast members come back pretty soon after they leave, but we haven't seen people from this era of the show leave in many, many years. So Morgan, where do you think Kate McKinnon will come back next, and where would you like to see her back next on the show?
I definitely feel like she will come back. Maybe, I don't know about next year, but maybe in 2 years from now. I think that she would want to come back and host. Maybe she'll be promoting a movie that she's in. I know that she's working on some right now, or some new TV shows. There was rumor going around that maybe she was going to have her own talk show or something. So I feel like she's going to be a very busy girl. So hopefully we see her back, whether it's just because she's hosting or she's promoting something awesome that she's doing.
Okay. Rebecca, what about you? When do you think we will see Kate McKinnon back at the show, and when should we see her back?
I honestly don't think she'll host it anytime soon. I think it's going to be more, I think we'll see her before the season 50, I'm assuming they're going to have a celebration like they did the 40th, but on that assumption, I think she will come back and play like a pivotal role in that. But up until then, I think if there's anything, there will be more political stuff. And I think she'd be a great cast member to bring back for that specific type of role. And I think that would be so great. Like having a Maya Rudolph-esque where then she's just such a legend. Like if Maya Rudolph's there, she just like comes into a sketch now. That's kind of the precedent being set there. And I could see that happening for Kate more than hosting in the recent years, but then I'm thinking she'll have a big part in the season 50 celebration, and then we might start seeing her host from then.
That is for sure. We will definitely see her at SNL 50, but I do wonder if we will see her beforehand. So, Bill, what do you think?
I would be utterly shocked if she doesn't host next year's finale. I just think that's kind of the way that Lauren plays it with these kind of goats. Kristen came back very quickly. I would prefer that it be a little bit longer. I feel like, how can I miss you when you won't go away? Maybe season 49 would be a better place for her to come back. But as Rebecca says, if she comes back for a one-off impression, I'm all for it. Pop in, do one sketch, pop out, say goodnight. But I would be shocked if she doesn't host next year's finale or Christmas show.
Yeah, I would say that I would prefer her not to come back or appear in season 48. I think she's always welcome at the show. We want to see these greats come back. It's always fun. But I do think that in the first year after, I think we need to give it a little bit of time to breathe, just to let the show develop, without her a little bit. I would love to see season 49. I'm all for it. Give me the Christmas show in season 49, whatever it is. I'm happy to have Kate McKinnon there. I think that's fun. I think we can celebrate her then. I do think that it would be interesting to kind of ponder. Bill, let me just throw this back at you. Does Kate McKinnon end up being a 5-timer one day when all is said and over? Does she host the show 5 times?
If the show stays on after 50 and Lauren doesn't retire and take the show with them, yes, she will.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I assume obviously if the show closes out at
Yeah.
50, I don't think we're going to get Kate McKinnon as a 5-timer, but that would be interesting. Obviously Tina Fey being, the most, female cast member that's come back and hosted so many times, hosted 6 times at the show. So, would be interesting to definitely, see what happens with Kate McKinnon moving forward. Okay. Morgan, any final thoughts on Kate McKinnon as we wrap up our discussion of her career today?
I mean, I feel like we unpacked and uncovered a lot here, but yeah, I mean, Kate will always hold a special place in my heart for sure. And it's fun to go back and watch all of her old sketches and work. And I mean, she is such a legend in my eyes. And it was so fun watching her throughout the years. But yeah, she is a GOAT, and I would love for her to come back and host soon, but I'm just happy and excited to see what she's going to be doing in the future now and what route she's going to take with more of the acting things, maybe talk show host. She's so much potential and opportunity. And now she can kind of just like live her life and keep doing the things that she wants to do and keep seeing her dreams come true.
Okay. Rebecca, any final thoughts on Kate McKinnon today?
Well, just first, Jon, thank you so much for this free Kate McKinnon's Leaving SNL Will Be Okay therapy session. This has been good to talk this out with people. But I just think, obviously, we're going to miss her in the show. And we saw that. We got a glimpse of that already when she wasn't in a good chunk of the past few seasons due to filming. And it was a part that we're looking and we're like, we're missing her, but we don't want to get tired of Kate. So I think this is the perfect time for her to be leaving. And I mean, it's just been so great to grow up with such a legend on the show like this that I'm excited to see what she does in the future. And I suggest everyone to go back like I did before this and just watch compilations of her best moments on YouTube because it's so worth it. She's incredible.
100%. Bill, final thoughts on Kate McKinnon?
Well, to echo what both of these guys have said, and I think it's important not only to say it again, but to kind of emphasize it will be okay. There will be somebody else. And it's hard to see it in the moment, but there's always somebody else. And she may always be in your Mount Rushmore. And she's damn close to mine. But, we have so much talent on this show that's going to be able to fill in the holes. But Kate was such an integral part of the show for so long. And I'm very grateful for her time on the show. And I'm also grateful that her and 80 especially did not leave after the shortened season in 2020, came back and, came to a full audience and were able to do the show and leave on their own terms. And I'll be appreciative of that for sure.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm gonna miss Kate McKinnon. I do feel like it was probably her time to leave the show. I mean, we've seen so many legends leave in the past. I'm gonna miss her because I do feel like, even you saw it in the Billie Eilish episode this year where she had that sketch, where she's holding up the signs and looking out the window. I mean, that there were some moments this year that we got which were absolutely legendary that you don't get from other cast members at the show. And I think that, maybe, over the last few years with the bloated cast, she wasn't appreciated as much as maybe she should have been. But I think over time, people are going to look back and be like, wow, Kate McKinnon was in that cast. I mean, that's pretty stacked. So I think that she's really just an all-time legend. And I'm happy that we got to honor her SNL career tonight. All right. So let's talk about what's happening here at the SNL Network. Just your typical Monday night where we are here every single Monday to talk Saturday Night Live. And we have begun these retrospectives. And we are going to continue doing these next week, where we are going to talk about the SNL career of Pete Davidson. So we will have a lot of fun, a very different SNL career than Kate McKinnon. We'll go through the Pete moments and talk about some of the fun things that have happened throughout his time at the show and really just dive deep into what his career at the show meant. So we'll be back with a great panel next Monday night. Between now and then, we have a very fun SNL stories coming out later this week, and that is with Mitchell Kriegman, who is somebody who worked at the show during season 6 of the show, which is the year after Lorne Michaels left Saturday Night Live. And he was brought in to produce some films for the show and actually be a featured player on the show, though he never appeared in the credits as the opening montage as a featured player. So he talks about that story. He talks about actually being let go from the show by Gene Dumanian, the executive producer of the show at the time, during the Christmas episode of 1980 season 6. So we had some really fun stories. He's also the executive producer of Clarissa Explains It All. So it was a very fun discussion. That'll be out later this week. You can join us on a Wednesday night as we put out that show and broadcast that on the SNL Network. And of course, if you missed our By the Numbers show last week, we were live for 4.5 hours as we went through every cast member in season 47 and rated their season from 1 to 10. If you joined us and listened to all of that show, you are a real one. We appreciate you, because that is great, as we talked about everything from season 47 and wrapped up that coverage. So that was a lot of fun. We have a lot of great podcasts planned for the rest of the summer, and I hope you'll join us for all of that coverage. Okay, Morgan, where can the listeners reach out to you and see everything that you have going on?
You can find me at Morgan Killoren. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And I just wanted to say thank you, Jon. This episode was so fun to really dig deeper into Kate's career and kind of close it out here. So thank you for having me.
Of course. Pleasure to have you, Morgan. I'm glad the thunderstorm seemed to have stopped behind you, so it looks like it'll clear up in Chicago. All right, over on the West Coast, Rebecca North, thank you for joining us tonight. Where can listeners reach out to you and see everything you're up to?
Well, thank you for having me. It's so fun. I haven't been podcasting in like 2-3 weeks now, so I've been missing it. And you can find me on any social media at Rebarbecue. And keep an eye out on the SNL Network social media, because when we figure out our plans for the summer and next season for Hollywood Dish, we'll keep you updated there. So whenever we do have an episode, feel free to tune in, but just keep an eye out on social media for when the next episode will be.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to that, to catch up on some pop culture. And if you missed any of those Hollywood Dish episodes throughout the season, they're really fun to go back to and check out if you're looking for something extra to listen to this summer. Bill, always a pleasure getting to talk to you about SNL. Where can the listeners reach out to you?
Thanks for having me, Jon. This was a lot of fun. I was definitely feeling the missing of the podcasting as well. You can follow me at Twitter or on Twitter or Instagram at BKLove73, and look out for a special Superfans episode coming up, right, Jon?
Yeah, we are working hard on that. That's going to be a really fun one. So that'll be just in a few weeks' time. Looking forward to putting that one out. Of course, for everything we're doing, you can find us at the SNL Network. We'll obviously put out our schedule and all the things we have going on. I believe that Nicole is planning on putting out some moments from each of these cast members' career after the podcasts have been recorded. So look out on our socials tomorrow for some Kate McKinnon moments that we're going to be posting on our feeds. So that'll be fun. You can find everything at the SNL Network, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. Rebecca, did you want to comment on it?
Yes, I do want to say that
Yeah.
Bowen Yang referenced SNL Network Twitter on his latest podcast episode of Las Culturistas. He says it like right in the beginning, and it's so cool to be mentioned there. So that's awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome. Thanks to Bo and Matt for that one. So you could also find me at Jon Schneider 24 on any of the socials to reach out. Would always love to hear from you. And by the way, if you want to become a patron of the SNL Network, patreon.com/the SNL Network, we just launched the SNL Network private private Discord server for our patrons. So if you want to join us, we're actually chatting. We got a bunch of the podcasters, we got some patrons on there, and we're talking about Saturday Night Live each and every day. We're getting the listeners' thoughts and the patrons' thoughts on all the podcasts, so we can take some of their things and put them into the shows that we're producing. So, really great to get to talk to them on more of a daily basis and have them contribute to all of our shows. And of course, we're going to have some more patron podcasts coming up later this summer. All right. So for Morgan, Bill, and Rebecca, my name is Jon Schneider from the SNL Network. We will see you next time, everybody. Have a good one.